Okay, Headset podcast listeners, I have a sports media personality that I cannot believe I'm getting the chance to speak with. When I do these incredible interviews and conversations with people, just so you know, to share some of the secrets from the kitchen, we spend time talking before these meetings. We spend time before we actually say, let's start this, getting our chickens all lined up or our ducks all lined up, however you want to refer to that term. And the lady that I'm about to speak with today is someone that I haven't even had the chance to tell her the story of what happened this morning about my excitement in speaking with her. Today I have sports media personality, superstar that I grew up watching on television, the one and only Lisa Bowes. So Lisa, thank you so much for making time to talk with me. And I can't thank you enough. Thank you.
Well, thanks for having me, Jay. It's awesome to be with you.
So we must have did a blah, blah, blah for, I don't know, close to 30, 45 minutes before we started this. And what I didn't tell you is I spoke to my mom today. And she's like, so what's going on? What are you doing over there? Who are you talking to, right? I said, well, you're not going to believe this. I said, I've got this incredible lady I'm going to talk to, and she used to be on TV back home. Oh, what's her name, right? So I told her I'm going to be talking to Lisa Bowes, and she's like, Lucky, who Lisa Bowes? Right? I go, she was on TSN, she was on Sports Desk, she did The Score, she also covered the Vancouver Olympics, she was the host for women's hockey in the Vancouver Olympics. Don't need to go over who won the big game, even though it's Canada Day today. Don't want to say things that might offend any of those American listeners on Canada Day, as my girl is sporting her Sport Canada soccer jersey right now. So I tell my mom, this is who I'm talking to, and she's like, "Oh, that's really good. She sounds like a big person." I'm like, "Oh yeah, she's huge, mom." So I get off the phone and I'm at Starbucks. And my mom calls me back, and she goes, "Ma, do you know who you're gonna talk to today?" I go, yeah. But she's a big girl, this girl, huh? And I go, yeah, I told you. She says to me, you better dress nice when you do this one. So I'm like, what does that mean? I go, it's a podcast. She goes, you never know who'll be listening. You better dress nice. So I was told to supposedly dress nice as I have my wrinkled Canada shirt on. I'm going to never hear the end of it. So my
Well,
mom
tell
says
your mom
hi.
I said hi. I was going to say, tell your mom I say hello. God bless her.
Yeah, my mom says hello. So, Lisa, there's so many things for us to talk about. I mean, this could be a mini series, to say the least. But you know, to ask you questions about your career, because you are a role model for so many young women who have either entered the world of sports media or are in it right now. And I got to ask you, when you were coming up through the ranks, cutting your teeth with TSN, what were some of the big challenges for you as you pursued your career?
Well, 100%. I think the first thing, Jay, is that we were a unique presence in the work environment. The late, great Phyllis George was really who I had to look to, and so many of us who started back in the early 90s. And I would often refer to her, to say, hey, she was doing that NFL Today show in the late 70s. So this was not unusual, but I definitely had a lot of my colleagues, and so at that time, definitely players, the athletes, who thought this was a unique thing. And I think because I worked in television, we were a little more obvious. We were, there were lots of beat writers. There was lots of radio actually back in those early days, but not as much TV. And so when you come in, especially to a dressing room, and you come in with the camera, it's quite obvious that you're there. And so I guess in those early days, I had those challenges of being accepted, Jay, of being accepted and letting the players and letting my fellow colleagues know that I was there to do the job. And I was there, and to earn their respect. Very important for me to earn the respect and for them to just recognize that I was just another reporter in the room trying to get the story.
When I think about around the time when you were breaking in, and I want to say the mid to late 80s, is what comes to mind. I remember being a freshman, playing varsity sports at one of the universities in Toronto. And this is probably mid 90s, 95, 96. And there was big controversy in the hockey locker room where we started having female therapists.
Hmm.
And we had a scenario one time where it was, to say the least, a little bit of drama that had happened because at that time there were guys that had girlfriends on the team and were like, they travel with you, what's that like? And soon right after that, as being an author yourself, and being in that sports media journalism world, that a lot of times journalists will be assigned to a team or a sport to cover. And in the second year at this school, we actually had a female reporter that was assigned to the team. And in Canada, as you can imagine, hockey, covering that program, that team, is a big thing because it lasts so long. The team starts in August and finishes maybe end of March, end of April, kind of thing. So it's a long season to cover. A lot of things you can write about. And we had scenarios amongst the guys where there were a lot of significant others that were not very happy with that back then.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
was that something difficult for you as well? Here's just the incredible talent of a lady in the locker room.
Well, I'll give you a classic. I'll give you a couple of instances from quote unquote back in the day where there was one instance where the players actually they they decided to uh, basically they weren't wearing much. Let's call it that. Okay, so all the reporters coming in, not just for myself, but for our my male colleagues, right? That was the room that we entered, and and it is a, a special place for them, right? For all teams, and we have to respect the rules, and yet at the same time, though, the rules are in place. 15 minutes after the game, the media comes in, and we're really the middleman, right, or the middle person between the players and the people that are ultimately paying their salary, that being their fans. So this relationship between media and players has definitely evolved, and I guess very early on, I know one that really stands out for me is actually I came in, there was someone that was interviewing a player, and I came in because we're on deadline to also to come in near the end of the interview. And that reporter said to me after we had finished, he said, "Do you mind?" And I said, "Well, we're all on deadline." And he said, "Yeah, I bet you don't even know who that is." And I said, "Oh," and I said the player's name. And then he said to me, "Well, I'm sorry. So you do know. Well, my apologies to you and your network." And so that kind of attitude was and I was very young at the time too. I was, in my early 20s, and, walking into some of those environments for sure was different. But at the same time, for me, I grew up with boys. I grew up with boys. I was in a newsroom before I became a reporter that was, significantly mostly men. And to this day, I mostly work with men and feel comfortable in that environment. And so I think going back to me growing up with boys and being in the sports environment, this was not something unusual for me to just to be accepted, right? But I definitely, and even to this day, I probably am not as willing to show my vulnerability, because that was also part of how I survived, was
Yeah,
to be strong in those moments and not show any vulnerability.
it's incredible. When you talk about that word, vulnerability. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this incredible woman who's an incredible speaker, and I referred to her just the other day. Her name is Brene Brown. And if you're not, I would tell you to take a listen to some of her YouTube stuff, because she talks about the power of vulnerability.
Yes, and I've been hip to that in recent months, about that, about the power of speaking to your vulnerability. And I've always been someone that has wanted to just speak through my work. And I've had many challenges along the way. And I've never spoken to them until recently. And you're absolutely right, though, the power of that, and maybe what someone else might be able to learn from that is tremendous. And yet I've never really wanted to share that because maybe I've been, embarrassed. I've wanted to keep it in my past.
Mhm.
But now as we get older, you learn and you realize that those things are actually, they're wonderful to share. It's okay.
It's incredible what you're sharing and the path that you're taking us on right now with this insight that you're sharing, because I believe that vulnerability word and that sharing of vulnerability is what leads us to those huge catchphrases that we see in business and in sports today. And those are the terms of be genuine, be authentic. And I share this not to get too far off track, but to talk about how it comes full circle about the power of being vulnerable. A few weeks ago, I was asked to address this executive group in town. And one of the conversation pieces that they asked me to touch base on was the whole scenario of what we're dealing with in our world today of like Black Lives Matter. And I'm addressing these 15 some odd executives on how to do this. So what they're sharing with me is that the younger generations have come to them and said, you need to say something, you need to do something, you need to share something, you need to do it now. And it's not that they didn't want to, it was they just didn't know how to. So here's all these people hanging on my words of what to do. And I refer to them right back to what we're talking about right now. And that's to be able to say, be vulnerable, share that you can't relate to that scenario, but I'm looking for guidance from those of you that can teach me.
Yes, yes, exactly. And in television, and we're talking about the sports media career that I had for many years, it really is a subjective business.
Mm,
What one person likes, another person may not like. And I'm sure you have your favorites too when you
yeah.
think about who you like to get the news from or who you like to get your highlights from. And when you're in front of the camera, you really have to have that thick skin. And one of my bigger moments in terms of vulnerability is having to deal with an executive who really was never a fan of mine. And I tried so hard to please that person.
Mm,
And when I was actually, hired to do the commentary at the network level, and I had worked about, 10 years to get that job. And then to have that, then they started to play in my mind about, we need you to be this way and we need you to be that way. And when I came to that job, Jay, I was so confident in my abilities. I'd done work in the United States. I was doing all sorts of things, X Games, Stanley Cup playoffs, even anchoring at another network at the time. And then the voices started to come into my head about, you know, we need you to be somebody that is really not you. So to speak to your authenticity,
hmm
that is so important. You have to be yourself, and you can't be somebody else. And that's what also happened, right? To, I don't know if you wanted to ask me about that with
Yo, please,
the
please.
TSN.
No, yeah, I would love for you to talk about, the challenges that you had in that you faced, and your career is well documented. And like I said, I grew up listening to you, and
Really? Oh my
oh
goodness, do
God,
I feel like
no,
that
don't,
I'm
not even, not even mean it that way.
I started very young. Well, no, well, I appreciate you saying that, and I really enjoyed that job. But you probably didn't know that I
No
went
clue.
through that, right? Because I've never shared it before. So just for your listeners, just to back it up, what happened was that I reached this great promotion. Then, as I was saying, I was being asked to, what I felt being asked to be perfect almost, to be something that I didn't really understand almost. What did you want me to be? Well, don't laugh, play it straight. And so I tried to be something I wasn't. And this became very stressful for me. I was losing my hair. I wasn't sleeping. I started to wonder, did I even know what I was doing? And here you have to remember, I've spent years building towards this moment for this one particular company. And then the decision is made for me, and I went up to have a meeting. I actually called the meeting and the paper came across the desk. You know, your presence is no longer needed. And so you can leave now. And after, 9 years of working for that company and then feeling that, I was in shock. And in this case, in Canada, this was headline news because as a female to be let go, and one of the few females at that time, this actually was shot even bright, right? It had a magnifying glass on it.
Yeah.
And oh my goodness, I was in, and as I mentioned in a previous interview, it wasn't healthy. I was identified with that network. So TSN is like the ESPN of Canada. And I was Lisa Bowes TSN. And so when I was let go of that particular job, I lost my identity. I didn't know, I didn't get out of bed. I was depressed. There's no two ways about it. And I didn't know what to do. So that's unhealthy. You can't be that tied to your job or your position that you don't have that life outside of it. And that was a real wake up call for me.
But Lisa, like, I say this not, and I risk sounding like a real ignorant guy right now, but I mean, I will say this to you. You are exactly like a professional athlete. You are everything you're describing. You're a pro athlete, true and true. Like everything you're describing for those who may be listening at some point. If you're wondering what a pro athlete goes through, it's everything that Lisa is sharing right now. You lay it on the line. You sacrifice your life in so many ways to do the best that you can possibly do, to the point where you're physically exerting yourself day in, day out to meet deadlines and to be on point now. We need you to produce now. Your numbers are like any pro athlete's stats. And this is what they're saying. And when you were first here, your numbers were here, but now this is where you are. And oh my God. Yeah. And I remember again, like watching you on the different networks and I'll say this, and again, I hope I don't sound like an ignorant jerk right now, but for a lot of ladies who are in that sport, who are in that place, you sometimes wonder when the career evolves, was that your choice? Did you get married? You starting a family? It's easy to think that way as an observer, not knowing the behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Just like we hear in pro sports, like we heard a rumor years ago with Roberto Luongo. He played all those years in Vancouver. He runs Vancouver. Now he's with Florida. Why would that happen? Well, then you hear, well, guess what? That's where his family's from. They have a home there. There's behind the scenes stories that could justify the reasoning for this move. I wondered, is the same thing happening with you? Like, did you say enough of this? I want another part of my life to start. But that wasn't the case.
No, that wasn't the case. And what's interesting is that in the media coverage, and I took the high road. You always take the high road in these things, even though I was truly devastated. I had put so much stock and energy and experience, or, my whole life experience was wrapped up into this one job, which upon reflection is not healthy. But, they in the media said that it was a private matter between Lisa and the network. And so by saying that, and I thanked them, that's what I took the gratitude, and I do thank them. And it's funny because then a few years later, I then went back to work for the network. So, but at the time, this was challenging then for me to find a job going forward, because it made it look like maybe there was something I'd done that had I stolen from the cash register,
Right.
And so that was very difficult to let's liken this to boxing. First, I take a standing 8. And I'm stunned. And then we have the coverage in the paper telling the country that it was a private matter. Now I'm kind of hit again. And I feel like I'm down on the mat. And that's why, I definitely went through depression and all those things. But just like, and I love what you just said there about it is like an athlete. 100%. It's like that general manager that just isn't big on that particular player. And that's an experience that I can definitely relate to. And perhaps people listening to this can relate to that in their own workplace. What's interesting is that when you're in a visual position like we are in front of the camera, there really is nowhere to hide.
No.
And especially a smaller country like Canada, and at the time, really the one true sports network. But hey, you learn from these things, right? And I've definitely learned from that.
But to draw it again to even closer proximity, similarities to pro sports, your world that you've been a part of is small. And as we say in sports, as you get closer to the top, the world gets smaller and smaller. And you get traded from a team, right? There's going to be talk. There's perception, who would ever want to leave New York, living in downtown New York City, right? Who would ever want that, right? So now you're in this professional sports environment and you are truly that of a professional athlete, and all the stress, sacrifice, and professional demeanor you need to put forth every single day, not to mention you need to perform every single day. It's hard to trade. It's hard to go from playing for the Toronto Maple Leafs to the Montreal Canadiens. It's not easy to make that shift. So I can't even imagine what that was like for you to have to
Yes.
then move to another network and still be professional, right? Because one of the things that we don't want to talk about in pro sports, at any level of sport, I should say, is when you leave team one to go to team 2, everyone kind of disappears, and it's just, the team itself. We all gravitate to, so what was it like? What
Yes.
happened, right?
Yes. And in fact, the gentleman that was running the network that I went to at the Score, he had a meeting with me, and I can clearly remember him asking me, like, what happened at TSN? Like, what happened there? No one seemed to understand what happened. Like, are you damaged goods? Like, what happened? And for somebody who worked very hard to maintain a reputation of being, a good storyteller and making, I really worked hard at that. And to this day, I feel very good about all the contacts that I've made and all the people that go back through my entire career who I can call up in a heartbeat. That was very difficult for me to learn that someone else thought that there was something wrong with me, especially when I just lost that great job, I thought, right? And so then I'm given a life raft basically, and I had an opportunity to go down to to work in the United States, and I said no, I'd like to stay in my home and stay in Canada. And so the Score offered a whole raft of opportunities, and it's a cliche, but when one door closes, 4 open. From there, I then go to another network, and then, my goodness, lo and behold, I end up back at the network where they had let me go.
It's
Different people, right? Different people, different GMs.
different GMs looking at the scenario completely different, right? It's funny. I've said to many coaches at the seminars that I've spoken to or spoken at that putting together a team is much like walking into a museum, and if you don't have good communication skills and you're unable to really, in an eloquent way, explain what you see, a dozen people could be looking at the same painting and seeing a dozen different things. So if you don't know, you just don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Your scenario reminds me of one that I experienced many years ago with my first interaction with a very high level NHL agent. And I was brought into a very, we'll call it sticky situation, to help a couple of athletes that were under his umbrella through one of his, I guess you'd say, team members. So his team member had reached out to me and said, listen, we have a couple of athletes that are struggling right now, and we're not too sure what to do for them and how to help them. Can you spend some time? And I said, sure, no problem. I think it would be a good idea that your boss and I communicate ahead of time so that, he doesn't feel I'm stepping on toes or anything like that. And within our first conversation, this gentleman pinned me to the wall, demanding that I tell him everyone that I've worked with. And then from there, explain what you did with them and what they were going through. And what seemed at first like the opportunity of a lifetime turned out to be one of the greatest lessons I've ever learned in being able to say, you know what, I'm going to grab the next bus because this one's not for me. And, in my world, I don't collect people like trading cards. That's what his world is. In my world, true professionals like you, and you just say it didn't work out. So kudos to you. So then I got to ask you this: how good does it feel to be back on the mountain in 2010, and now you're hosting, and you are the person in charge of the 2010 Olympic Winter Games? Not a big deal. Being from Canada, having to do it in Vancouver, not a big deal. Right? How was that?
Yeah, women's hockey.
Oh.
Women's hockey, yeah. Well, and here, so the interesting thing about this is that the people who had let me go and I wasn't really clear exactly who wasn't a fan of mine, but really the brain trust, if you will, they were the ones that were now in charge of the coverage for the 2010 Olympic Winter Games. And in Canada, it was a number of networks. So there were multiple GMs, if you will. So we'll keep that analogy going. Mm-hmm. Multiple GMs involved with all of their players and who would go to Vancouver. And this was a massively huge assignment, as you just said, right? In Canada, home games, may never come around again in my lifetime. And so I was on the board, and yet I was worried and nervous about whether I would stay on the board because of my past history, because 10 years previously, I've been let go by who knows, we're not exactly sure, we have an idea, and they're in charge. And so I recognize that I've got to get some help. I need to prepare for this assignment. And thankfully, I stayed on the board, and I had to get myself ready in my mind so that the noise of when they let me go and try to be this and try to be that and not be yourself and all that, I went and sought out a friend of mine who's a sports psychologist, and she called it,
wow,
those are your triggers, Lisa. They're triggering you. And you will not probably be able to have a successful games. And for us in front of the camera, that means every time we perform in front of the camera, it's got to be smooth, right? No mistakes, right? It has to be in the timeline. We have to be on top of the stories. It's a long tournament. People don't realize for me as the reporter, I'm really in the bowels of the hockey rink. It's not that glamorous because I didn't even really see the Olympic Games because we're working. And in that tournament, we had sometimes 2 games a day. Mm-hmm. And it's a 3-week, and we will be judged. This is what the producer would say. You will be judged by your last 2 games, bronze medal and the gold medal. Everything you do leading up to that, the 2 weeks beforehand, really mean nothing. You'll be judged by those last 2 games. Wow. So Dr. Karen McNeil is her name, and she helped me to get ready for that because I did not want to have what was triggering me from 10 years ago about, where I had zero confidence in my work. And she asked me to actually create a gold medal. And I have kept it, and I have shown it to you, Jay. Mm-hmm. And she asked me, and I still have it, so 10 years later, and she asked me to write down quotes from what some of the execs had said to me leading into Vancouver. So some of them, so here's one right here. I hope all my talent have been as diligent as you. I was impressed. Your preparation was exceptional. And so I wrote those quotes down, and then she had me write down words that I just would describe myself. How do you describe yourself, Lisa, heading into this assignment? So I wrote down experience, knowledgeable, confident, respected. What an opportunity, veteran, I rock, things like that on this gold medal. And it is actually, a piece of gold paper that I've in a circle, and it's a gold medal. And I brought this to Vancouver with me to remind me and reinforce I am capable. And those triggers will not come into effect. They will not break me down. And whoever it was that didn't care for me 10 years ago, don't worry about it. And so to wrap that story up, yes, it was one of the most watched. The final between Canada and the United States was one of the most watched games still in Canadian history.
Hmm.
At one point, it clocked in at 7.5 million people.
Wow.
So a highlight for me, for sure, in terms of a career highlight. And at the very end, the gentleman who I told you about, who had to let me go and shot the paper across the desk in 1999, after the Olympic Games, he came up to me and he said, "I'm so glad to see you here." And it was really emotional for me. And it's emotional every time I think about it, because it really proves the point that you just have to keep going and believe in yourself and believe in your abilities, no matter what someone else thinks or says, or as people in our business say, they tried to break you, they broke you. No, they didn't break me.
Right.
I just had a standing 8.
You are my little Rocky Balboa. You're my blonde Rocky Balboa is who you are. And you know, I sit on that because, as you said, you know, the standing 8 revolves Rocky Balboa. But at the same time, you're describing the fight to prove yourself, to warrant the opportunity to be in that match, right? Like
Yeah.
this wasn't just a lottery that you ended up there. Like you had to prove to everybody around. But this is where I call you my little Rocky Balboa. I call you my little Rocky Balboa because the depths that you went to prepare yourself are completely Rocky Balboa. It's no different than the trainer Mick saying, we're going to teach you to hit with the opposite hand. You're going to fight with your opposite hand. We're going to make you grease lightning. We're going to make you do things that maybe you haven't done before, but we're going to push you to be the best version of you. And you know, to listen to you talk about the work that you put into yourself to be the best you could be for not just your fans, but the people that were relying on you or giving you that opportunity. Oh my God, you're awesome. You're awesome. You're a dream in the sense that you went and did a little bit more than most would even know to do. And that's where I would challenge some people and say,
Mm-hmm.
you say you're the pro, you say that you would do anything to get the best story, best, you know, clip, whatever it may be. But what does that mean, right? Like how deep are you willing to go to make yourself be the best version of you? And you just, that gold medal should have like stars and lights around it. That's, you deserve that times 10. So now
Well, thank you.
to switch gears here a little bit, because I want to make sure I get all of it in here. How do you become this insightful person who decides, on top of all of these incredible accolades you've garnered along the way? I do need to ask you this. My ADD's kicking in here. What piece were you nominated for a Gemini Award on? What was the piece that you did? And for those of you who don't know what the Gemini Award is, it's basically like a writing award for an incredible story written in sport, I believe, right? So
Yes, yeah, they now call them the Canadian Screen Awards.
Oh, great. Okay, awesome.
So it would be similar to that in the United States, the equivalent to that. And this was actually, it was a documentary on free diving. Yes, free diving. So yes, I was very pleased. It was obviously fantastic validation, to be nominated for that, for best writing in an information program or series. And it was on not anything that I would normally have done that you would know me from, Jay, in terms of professional sports. It was free diving. And so, you know, doc work, which I really love. Like I love The Last Dance and you know, all that work, you know, 30 for 30, you know, E60, just brilliant stuff. And in Canada, we had a show that was actually before a lot of that. It was very issue based, kind of like a 60 Minutes, but in the sports landscape. And it was called Sports Journal, and it was with CBC. And so we looked at issues. In fact, I did a story on Gary Roberts when he played for the Maple Leafs about his asthma.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, and not many people knew about that. That's something that drives me, is trying to find also those stories that can have the most impact. So to have an NHLer taking a puff on an NHL bench, wow, what powerful messaging is that for the little ones who are struggling, right, to get their activity levels and to breathe, right?
What an incredible story to be able to share with little ones about nothing can hold you back if you don't want it to, right? I mean, the limits that we tend to put before kids and before ourselves is incredible. How much we can be an anchor for ourselves rather than that propeller that launches us. So I got to ask, with that zest for writing and finding those incredible stories, and also finding the motivation within those stories, those exciting pieces within those stories that can almost be like a Rocky Balboa story, right? Again
Yes.
and again. Is this that internal flame that was fired up inside of you to bring to life little Lucy?
You know, Jay, I almost feel like in many respects, my entire life and all my life's work experience has brought me to this moment today,
And
to be the author and the creator of this series. So for your listeners, it all happened right before I was getting ready to cover women's hockey at those Vancouver Olympic Games.
wow.
My daughter at the time was 2.5, and I was looking for books to read to her that related to sport, picture books. And my first thought was about educating families about different types of sport. We have lots of mainstream picture books out there, mainstream sports, meaning basketball and baseball. So I thought, wow, we could create a collection of books that inspire kids to, number one, to be active, but also to try sport and maybe different types of sport, and educate them and do so as they learn to read. So working on the physical literacy and the reading literacy. And that's how it all started. And it all started from those Olympic Games that we've just talked about, me working so hard to get to that. But out of that, my goodness, here I am, a writer. And actually my TV writing is what I draw from to write these children's books. So it's the Lucy Tries Sports book series, targeted to ages 3 to 8. Lucy and her friends, they're diverse, they're inclusive. And we started out of the gate, out of the box, Jay, with Lucy trying luge. A
So
sliding sport, right? Which is so unique, but she overcomes her fear. And so they're all built on these principles of healthy child development. So what we know our kids need in order to stay in sport.
So what I love is not only your passion, not only the incredible good that you're doing, not to mention how good you are at doing what you do, but I love that the true Canadiana comes out of you. I, when are we ever going to see a book on kids getting involved in luge, followed by hockey, followed by short track skating? Right? The real Canadiana comes out of you, and it's absolutely awesome. And you know what? To even be a complete homer, and I know you know this. I'm sure there's people out there that may or may not know this, but basketball as well, Canadiana. Hello,
Yeah.
Dr.
Yeah.
Naismith, right?
Yeah.
Sure are people down south where I live, they don't want to hear that. But the reality of it is you're true Canadiana all the way through. And I just think it's incredible. And
Well, I appreciate that. And, you know, and there is another Canadian moment, if you can, if we talk to the Toronto Raptors, which are, you know, the defending NBA champions. But interestingly enough, Lucy Tries Basketball, which I wrote a few years ago, I actually put a Kawhi Leonard type moment in it at the back of the book. So there's a buzzer beater. And so that was kind of a neat thing to happen, that the Raptors of all teams would come out of the gate here in 2019 and win the NBA title. And so, and our book was released in September of 2019. So it's kind of following on the heels of that June championship. And I think, you know, Jay, what I do want to just stress here too with these books, because words matter. Words are so important. And you know that in what you do in your work. And the tries, it's not Lucy play sports or love sports, that she's trying.
Trying.
And I really believe so firmly that we have to build that resiliency in our children, and especially now in COVID, that perseverance factor to try. And, the books, as I said, reinforcing those healthy principles of child development, but also at the same time, having all kids realize that if they can see it, they can be it. And that's also a really important element here. And so we've been very blessed to, really this series, it's a best-selling series. It's in simplified Chinese, it's in French. The books are available around the world. And because of my background, it is kind of cool for me that we have a female as the lead character in the sports space and children's sports, because we don't see that too often.
No.
But boys love her too, because kids don't see gender. And so my whole other goal, now that you heard about, me in dressing rooms and all that, it's as little boys are engaged by Lucy and friends in these books, they see a strong, courageous female from an early age. And that can help to change their perception, or form their perception of girls, and therefore, as they become men, later women. That's the deep subtext of why Lucy is the lead character.
Well, I'll say this, amen, sister. And I will tell you why this is so powerful to me. It's so powerful to me because for a good portion of my life, everything that you're accentuating about Lucy, I was completely oblivious to. And what I mean by that is, for a good portion of my life, I was surrounded by women. My mom was a single mom, 2 kids, and I was raised by her sisters and my grandparents. So I know nothing about women's lib or women power, girl power. I grew up for the majority of my life thinking that everyone's mom can change the oil in her car, fix the leak in the roof, and make sure the pasta is still al dente at the same time. You mean your mom can't do that? Right?
Right. Amazing. Yeah.
So it was weird, because I remember going through a phase where when my mom had gotten remarried, and I had friends come into my life and see our family, see how our family works, and to see their faces, see my mom, who always loved the character Lucy, per se, from Peanuts back in the day, because women are supposed to be strong, tough, rough, and yet cute. It was interesting to see these guys see my mom in action, because my mom's out there cutting the grass. My mom was out there, if the snow fell before we got home, she shoveled the driveway, right? Like it was interesting seeing that, because that was normal to me. And then growing up in society and seeing so many people who don't think that normal, it was like, what goes on in your house, right? So the fact that you're bringing that to mainstream, that try, I think it's amazing. I think it's amazing. It really is that encouraging cookie, I think, that kids should be taught to run for,
Yes, and it's not just sports too.
Mm-mm.
In fact, when I do my school activations or my school visits, now obviously we're having to adapt that as well. I miss the little ones, not being able to see them. Is that might be, I do a lot of work as well with our Indigenous communities here in Canada. And in those cultures, a little one said to me, well, could Lucy try bird watching? And I said, oh, yes, of course. Yes, she can. Lucy can, who likes art? Lucy can try art. And so when we have that outcome, Jay, where then through the school, we have the children then being introduced to the Lucy series, and then the teachers and the educators, when they take me up on the concept of creating their own Lucy books, and then they put themselves in the book, now we've got something even more special. I had a principal tell me, Lucy, you help unite my school, because she was a common friend in my school, and everybody was writing their Lucy books. And then in other situations, they put themselves in the book. And that's what I was speaking to, that, Broden tries piano. So he then is maybe trying piano in real life. Now he's writing about it and illustrating and creating a book.
Oh my God.
Based on the Lucy Tries Sports series is an incredible thing. Like I cry, grade ones read out loud to me their Lucy Tries Camping. So it works within the curriculum. They're reading out loud their own thing they created. And children have so much to offer us. These minds of theirs are incredible.
I mean, you should have your own show. Like this is ridiculous. The fact that I'm having this moment. I mean, I just wish my mom could see this because she's still not even going to believe it when I tell her. Listen, here's what you've created. You've created a tool of empowerment. That's what you've created. And I don't want to sound like a complete cheeseball, right? Where we talk about like headset sports, but my colleague would kill me if I didn't. But I'll tell you where I see the similarities between our product that we created a few years ago and what you've done. It's a tool of empowerment. It's a tool of encouragement, and it's a tool that can also be used in so many different ways. And what I mean by that is what you're explaining to me, which must be so cool for you, is similar to what we're experiencing in that people are using our tool and they're coming back and said, did you know that this thing can also do this?
Amazing. Wow.
Right. But you're doing the same, right? Like you said, you have kids that are reading to you, writing their own books, taking it and trying completely different things, whether it be piano, bird watching, camping. Like it's a tool to empower yourself to either want to try, follow through with a try, or
yes,
explain how a try went, and I think that is the most amazing thing about this tool that you've created.
Well, thank you, Jay. And I don't know if I would be where I am today to share those beautiful stories with you, if not for the journey that I had through sports media and through that perseverance factor of first being accepted, having to be accepted as a female in that work environment, having to overcome those obstacles consistently, and then feeling like I had, and then having the job taken away, now having to overcome that obstacle as a, quote unquote visual job in Canada and well known, and then having to rebound, come through it, and then Olympics, come through the triggers from what I had to deal with all those years before, come through it. And so that's why the tries is so imperative for me. And that's why when I'm able to do these speaking events and to also bring the program to schools, it really means so much to me, because I think, again, it goes back to that vulnerability. And we all have something to share. We all have a story. We all have vulnerabilities. And when you can, when you can try to make those things happen through something like a children's book, right? Sorry, I'm just getting a call in here. There we go. Once you can use a tool, and that's what you're doing with Headset, and to be able to then carry it forward and maybe help to make a difference for someone else, well, isn't that the best of all? It's not about financial success. It's not about publicity. No. It's about helping other people. And I guess that's my main goal. If you ask me, why are you doing this? I passionately and really sincerely care about our future generation and their health. This is about children's health. It's not about winning Olympic medals or winning a Stanley Cup or getting a scholarship. It's about children's health. And because we know the research is clear. If they have an active and a healthy life, then they are going to have a happy life. And the benefits mentally, physically, spiritually, socially are so clear. So I really hope through Lucy, and I'm reinforcing reading literacy as well, which is good for brain health. If we can do that, if we can inspire kids to be active and try sport, then that's a good thing.
Oh my God. I mean, we could talk for years straight with maybe a half a dozen bathroom breaks on amen, sister, on everything you're saying. I take that baton that you're carrying around the track of insight right now, and I look at that and say, you know, what is the next go around for the children that have a generation of Lucy? I often say to coaches in seminars and symposiums that I speak at, you're doing a great job if one day the kids you coach are coaching themselves one day, or you're doing a good job when the people that you coach today are putting their children in the same sport down the road, and now they're coaching their kids, or they're supporting their kids in the dreams that they have. And the reality of it is, this Lucy Tries series, it's all about the power of belief in themselves, the power of self-confidence, the power of saying, why not me? and,
Yes,
and
yes.
I look at this as if you can build that resiliency, that understanding, that motivation, that self-confidence to just go for it, truly, I mean, overcoming any obstacle would be like walking over a puddle. I mean, what we see in the development of so many kids is like that of a marathon, and that first mile is the most difficult mile.
Hmm.
Everything else falls into place. And I've also had the opportunity to talk to so many parents about the topics that Lucy embodies. And one of the things that I come across a lot of times is parents coming to me and saying, I'm really worried about my child being successful because I have never done this. I've never played this sport, or I've never accomplished blah, blah, blah. Right. And
Yeah.
I often tell them that they're the ones who probably have the greatest propensity for success because you know nothing. Whereas a lot of
Yes.
us who have the experience find all the pitfalls and all the holes and all the bad things, and that keeps us from trying. Why bother?
Well, my daughter is now in track, and I'll share with you that one of her coaches said the best parents are those that drop them off at the parking lot.
Amen, sister. If we could just coach orphans, the world would be a great spot, right?
Well, again, it's even the athlete development model that actually USA Hockey I know has, and I know the PGA is working on that. I think actually the United States Olympic Committee, I think it's that ADM you would their long-term athlete development model. I've also worked hard to ensure that we're reinforcing all those things as well. And as you can tell, because there's 5 sports that Lucy has tried so far, it's multi-sport. I'm a really big believer as well in that multi-sport, where we're trying many different things. And honestly, Jay, I used to talk to so many NHLers that were, lacrosse, baseball in the summer. They were not doing spring hockey. They were not playing just the one thing the whole time. And even that is out of shot for so many people. We really just want to have that active life and be able to play beer league hockey when you're older, right? It's not about getting the NHL. It's so multi-sport is another big area that we're also trying to reinforce. So,
Oh, I think
it's really been it's really kind of an interesting journey I've had in my career, I have to say, and my writing, the sports, everything, being a female, everything seems to have come and summarized, I guess, into this Lucy Tries Sports or Lucy Tries platform.
Lisa, I'm going to ask you one last thing here. We've been kind of hovering around this and touching this topic so much in so many different ways, whether it's the ups and downs you've had with your career, the perseverance you've shown through your career, now Lucy Tries. And that point is the mental side of sport. I could only imagine how many millions of stories you have that address that mental side of sport. And rather than having you list them all chronologically right now in alphabetical order, I guess I want to tap on your brain to ask what are your opinions? What are your insights as a person who's been in sport for all these years and now an author using sport?
Using sport in my career, like, well, for one thing, and I played soccer when I was at university. I think that team aspect is so imperative for if kids can get that aspect of team, because you're, and a coach, an encouraging coach, which is actually what I try to reinforce in the soccer book, an encouraging coach. And that team aspect, those skills that you pick up from being on a team, we know how much that can translate obviously into the workplace and all of the team relationships that you build as an adult. You know, I also think back when I talk about the mental aspect, oh, and even in COVID, especially now when we're trying, you know, nobody is okay. And nobody is okay. Just the value of also being able to go out for that walk or whatever that can change your perspective. And I have a couple, I guess a trick that I always have is I always try to think about, okay, if I'm thinking negatively, I let it wallow for just a tiny bit. And then I say, okay, that's enough. What's the positive now? So flip it to the positive. It could even be something as simple as the sun is shining, right? But what's the positive? Well, you managed to make this happen. Hope is such a powerful thing. And that mental aspect of whenever you're faced with something that is so difficult, you think it is so difficult, and how are you going to overcome this? I've lost my job. I don't know what's the future going to hold. You just always have to stop, take a deep breath. I always take lots of breaths, a lot of self-talk, and I turn it to a positive constantly. It's draining. Self-talk is draining. It's hard. But I guess if that answers your question, I don't know. Yeah. But I just think about the mental thing that we're all going through. And it's so true. Nobody's okay right now. And that's okay to have that moment. But then your brain's going to cope and know that we're going to be on the other side. Just know that.
You know, so much of the things that we talked about today, like you've given me goosebumps a half a dozen times in the last 10 minutes alone. but you know what I'm referring to. And in our earlier conversation, we talked about just little things that are so similar to the way you think, I think, and what you're doing and what we're doing. And I'll share with you a little tidbit of a story of another experience I had with this WOW team. A few years ago, I had the opportunity to work with some of these incredible athletes that are referred to as the Navy SEALs here in San Diego. And they have a lot of incredible sayings. But one of the most powerful sayings, which comes close to what you mentioned a few seconds ago, is you said, you know, when I have to do that reframing and I have to think of something good, I think at bare minimum, the sun is shining. Well, one of their most poignant and powerful sayings and mottos is, we never quit at nighttime, because it's only minutes away till the sun shines on us. And all good things happen when the sun is shining on us. So
I've got goosebumps. That's wow. Nice.
You're the one that started it. It was all you. You're the one who did it. Lisa, I really, really hope I can convince you to come back and talk with me more, because I think there's so many different things that we covered today, and there's so many incredible different topics that we could go over together and really highlight some of the things that you've glazed upon today. You're incredible, and I can't thank you enough. And I can't thank you enough for what you did, sticking your neck out and taking the initiative and taking little Lucy to that next level. Because I can honestly say, if I could go back 100 years, my mom would have little Lucy on my little bookshelf. That's for sure. So
well, it's a pleasure to chat with you, Jay. And I learned from you, right, as well. And thank you. Thank you, because, you know, I want, you know, it's the more you talk to people, the more you learn, right? And sometimes, you know, it is a journey. You know, I know there's a lot of these cliches, but gosh darn it, you know, you have to think about, especially in COVID.
Yeah.
Just know. So to your dear listeners,
yeah,
you know, I'm talking to you from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. You just know that we are all in this together.
Yeah.
And none of us are okay, but we're going to get through it.
You're the best. You're the best. I can't wait to talk to you some more. Thank you so much for today, and thank you so much for all that you do.